I'm Christine Hancock, and I'm an international trade advisor from the Department for International Trade, and I specialise in working with early exporters or completely new to export companies, and to help them make the most of the opportunities there are for companies to export. What I'd like to do today then is to have a chat with you first of all about the benefits of selling your products overseas and why that might help your company to grow in the future. Also, hopefully to inspire you to take the first steps and to outline a bit how the Department for International Trade can help you on that journey and help you maximise the opportunities that export growth brings. So, a brief introduction to DIT, the Department for International Trade, which used to be the UKTI. We have 40 offices across the UK helping UK-based companies export overseas. We also have 100 offices worldwide, based in embassies or consulates, and so these contacts that we have enable us to give you up-to-date practical market information and support in those areas. The companies we work with usually are already trading. Sometimes we work with startups, but usually they're already trading in the domestic market. Any sector, any size, and any stage of export as well. So it could be a completely new exporter or an existing exporter who maybe wants to break into a new market. And our advice is largely free, impartial, and confidential as well. And the benefits to you, on average, after working with us for 18 months, there is an average of £100,000 worth of additional sales won from overseas. So, any thoughts about what your fellow entrepreneurs are doing in the UK? Where are the top countries, do you think, or the most important countries that UK companies sell to overseas? Any thoughts apart from Gerald? Any ideas at all? What do you think's up number one? Germany's definitely in there. There's one above it, which is... US. Thank you. So let's have a look. We've got the United States at the top. Germany, any other thoughts? China's in there as well. Yep. France, Netherlands, Ireland, Switzerland, Italy, China, Belgium, and Spain. So, in fact, for goods, 7 out of 10 of the markets are in the EU, and for services, 6 out of 10 are in the EU. So quite a variety of the other ones. So we've got the US as well and China, both very important trading partners for the UK, but obviously hugely challenging in terms of the size of the market and lots of other issues as well. A country like Ireland, for example, is an ideal starting point for a new exporter, obviously due to the proximity, where Ireland is, the similarities in culture and language as well, and business etiquette. So different markets for different products and services. And just as a matter of interest, a few more statistics after we've had a look at those markets. The fastest growing markets that UK companies are selling to are in fact Macedonia, Kazakhstan, Oman, South Korea, and that's the South Korean flag, and Malta. So a huge variety of opportunities out there. Now, from the UK, people are selling all sorts of products and services. Food and drink is one of the main exports. So I think salmon, gin and chocolate are in the top 10. We also export a lot of things that you can't eat or drink, such as metals, plastics, medicines, jewellery, etc. And often when you think, services too are obviously an increasingly important export from the UK. And when you think of UK exports, maybe particularly in the Midlands, maybe you think of the large success stories such as JCB or Jaguar Land Rover. But in fact, when you think about it, all companies started as nothing more than an idea and 1 or 2 people. So with our support, or with the right support, I'd hope that the inspired ideas of today can become the global successes of tomorrow. And certainly within the West Midlands alone, we've worked with a huge variety of companies. So, for example, we've helped sell a Worcester-based company sell an animation cartoon strip to France recently. We've helped a company in Shropshire sell muesli to Japan. And if you see these very beautiful aprons down the bottom, this is a Shropshire company that you'll be hearing more about shortly. Having said how great it is to export and how many opportunities there are, and if you have a product or a service that's doing well in the UK, then there's every reason to believe that there's another market overseas where you might be able to sell your product or service. But why would a company not export? Any thoughts or ideas? Nope. Let me have a think then. Well, perhaps a company is satisfied with the level of sales it has in the UK. And certainly, if you're running around 6.5 days a week trying to fulfill UK orders, then probably it's not the appropriate time really for you to start considering export. Perhaps a company doesn't want to deal with the perceived hassle of extra regulations and logistics and cultural barriers that export can bring. Maybe a company's interested but just doesn't know where to start. Or maybe a company considers export very risky in uncertain times. But in fact, companies who export, research shows, are much more resilient to the ups and downs of a market's challenges. And as our friend from Facebook says, the only strategy that's guaranteed to fail is not taking risks. So maybe exporting is a risk that is worth you taking. So let's think now about the benefits to your business instead of exporting. Why would a company export? Why would exporting and overseas sales bring good things to a company? Don't worry, I'll do it. Well, the obvious one, I think, is increased sales and profits. So when you export, you reach more customers. More customers mean increased revenues. Increased revenues mean once you've offset any costs of export development, means more sales and more profits. So they're the obvious ones. It's a huge marketplace out there, and you'll reach more customers. In many markets, you have less competition as well for certain products or services. And also, exporting allows you to spread the risk that you have. So you're not tied to the ups and downs of your domestic market, of one particular market. And that's true when you start a business even in the UK. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, do you? So exporting allows you to spread the risk. Seasonal offset. So if you have a product or even a service that's only appropriate in your domestic market at certain times of the year, then obviously exporting can mitigate that, and you can be selling in other markets at different times of the year. When you export, you will certainly gain an understanding of new ways of doing things, new technologies, new marketing techniques, and this will help you gain new knowledge that will possibly help your domestic market as well as your overseas markets. Stay ahead of the competition, so by learning new things you can stay ahead of the competition. Develop and motivate staff, so by exporting you can enable your company to grow, and that might mean that you need to take on new staff and develop them. And I think there's nothing more exciting from a recruitment point of view if you're offering a job to somebody with the potential to develop a particular market overseas. And also extend the life cycle of a product. So if you think of the typical life cycle of a product where you introduce it into a market, it grows, it reaches maturity and then possibly declines. If you introduce it into a new market before it starts declining, then you can extend the life of that product. What I was going to say after we've thought about the benefits of exporting, it is something that does take resources, so it does take time. One of the most common reasons for failure in export is just not having the commitment to see things through and giving up too quickly. Their costs are higher than UK, so if you think really people do buy from people, so sooner or later it's imperative that you visit the market that you're selling to build those relationships. So obviously there's costs involved in that as well. More administration without a doubt, and it can take your eye off the UK ball. If you get a big order on a Friday from somebody who rings up from Germany and you spend the whole of the next week trying to fulfill it, the last thing you want to do is neglect your UK customers in the process. So it does take time, enthusiasm and commitment. Now, first thing you need to think about is what to export. So Sir James Dyson said, in the past, the UK got away with selling things that weren't unusual, and now it's no use trying to export without having something that's unusual and better. And I think that's really true. Whether or not you start with one product or a subset of your products, or you're going to start with all your products, it's important to think, what is your USP? So why do people buy from you? And is that USP the same for international markets? Would there be an international demand for all your products or some of your products? And that will help you identify what to focus on when you're thinking of starting to export or starting to export to a new market. And the second thing to think about once you've decided on the product that you're going to focus on is the country or the market to focus on. Without doubt there is a world of opportunities, but I think it's important to be realistic and focus on maybe one or two markets initially. And this will depend very much on what you're selling and what your experience is. But as I said before, an obvious one is to start, larger markets take more of a strategy and are harder and more challenging. So a market, for example, like Ireland or something close by is an obvious one for new exporters. When you're starting to research markets, it might be that at a trade show such as here or through your website that you've had a few inquiries from a particular country, and that's made you realise that there is potentially demand in that particular market. So to find out a bit more, talk to people that you know, talk to maybe your customers, talk to complementary businesses, so businesses that are similar to yours, and finding out what they're doing might inform your decisions for choosing which country to focus on. You can find out a lot from trade associations and also from just sitting at the computer, and find out a lot from Google on the internet. And obviously we're here as well at the Department for International Trade to help you, and I'll give you a bit more information about that shortly. We've also got exporting country guides on our website, which are free to download, and they're really informative and give you a wealth of information about particular countries. So if you wanted just to find out a little bit more about a country that you're thinking there might be a demand for your product, by all means go onto the website, the .gov website, and find our doing business in certain country guides. So when you're preparing, we've got the product that you want to export, we've got an idea of where to. What you've got to do then, unfortunately, is just research and find out all the things you need to do. It's not as simple as just sending your product there. The considerations that you need to start thinking about when you're exporting are huge, and the more research you can do in advance, the better. Market research, as I said, the more you don't have to be an expert, but the more you can find out about the market that you're focusing on, the better. Product and service tailoring. This can be hugely important. If you've thought about your product, does it need to be adapted in any way for the country that you're selling it to? And this could just be a matter of taste and personal preferences, or it could be something a bit more fundamental, such as to fit in with the rules and regulations and laws of a particular country. So does your branding, is that fit for international purposes? Does your labelling need to be amended? Anything like that. All these considerations are important to think about in advance. Many of the big companies we've heard have made huge mistakes, so you wouldn't be alone in making a mistake, but at the same time it's important to find out in advance. Routes to market. So how do people actually conduct business in the country that you're focusing on? It may well not be the same as over here, and it might be that you're focusing on going to market in one particular country maybe through e-commerce, and in another country through a distributor. So it could be different for each market, and it certainly could be different from how you sell over in the UK. Pricing and getting paid. I mean, it's obvious, you've got to have a pricing strategy. You've got to do a bit of research about how much you can charge in a particular market. And don't forget also that you've got to build in all the extra costs for exporting. So the logistics, the extra insurance, the marketing, everything like that. So you must be realistic. There's no point really, remember only one person can be the cheapest in a market. So probably that's not the correct strategy in the short term or the long term. It's important to find out, as I say, the price point that's acceptable in a particular market. I always like the story of pucker pies retailing for £10 each in Malaysia, I think it is. So, different markets, different prices. And how are you going to get paid? Make sure that you've got clear terms of delivery, payment terms, everything like that in place. International communication, so that's language and culture. Don't sabotage all your efforts through a lack of cultural intelligence. It's really, really crucial that you understand what's important in a given country. Culture will be different. How do people do business there? How important are relationships? When you accept someone's business card, how important is it that you take it with both hands and look at it rather than just shove it in your back pocket for later? So all these things are really important to understand. Legislation and duty, so different countries have different laws, and obviously you need to understand what laws will apply to your export activity. Shipping and documentation, so do you have the correct documents in place for your shipping? Is your shipping suitable for international standards? Do the documents within need translating? So all things to consider and all things that we can help you with. International contracts, so if you find a distributor in a different country, for example, you'll need to have a contract in place that probably is going to be quite different from the contract you have with any distributors over here. It's important too that you have your intellectual property protected before you go into a particular market, so you're less likely to be copied, or your products are less likely to be copied. And digital marketing and website optimization. So when you think about it, if you meet somebody from overseas and they're going to order from you, even if you meet them face to face, probably the next thing they're going to do is check your website. So is your website fit for international purposes? That's not just, it doesn't mean you have to translate the whole website, but does it say on the home page? If I landed on your home page, would I know that you're an international company? Do you state clearly that you ship worldwide? And optimization as well. If I looked for your product or your company, how easily would I find it? How visible are you in the overseas markets? And as a whole, digital marketing, think about your social media. Does that just focus very much on the UK? The content of your website. Do you have local references that maybe wouldn't mean anything to somebody from overseas? So at any stage, what we're trying to do is to make you in control, rather than being that reactive exporter who runs around all week trying to fulfill an order that they got out of the blue. We want you to be strategic, to make exporting an important part of your business plan, so that you're in control, you can focus on where you want to sell, how much you want to sell, and when you want to scale up. So by being a strategic exporter, you can really make the most of export opportunities. So how can we help at the DIT? Well, we have international trade advisors who are experts at helping companies develop an international trade plan and can give advice and facilitate contacts and help you at really every stage of the export process. Country and sector information, so once you've chosen on the market, we can support the information that you've already found out by giving you extra information and maybe contacting our colleagues overseas to give them, to ask them specific queries related to your exports. International events, expos and missions. So we have a presence at many large expos throughout the world and in the UK. We also have a lot of international events, and they can take place in different countries throughout the world, but also they can take place in the UK. So for example, on Friday at the ICC in Birmingham, we have a huge event with 40 people coming over, commercial representatives from different countries. So really you can see the world in an afternoon in Birmingham and talk about the potential for your company and for its products there. We can make introductions, as I said. Language and culture advisors. So we have experts who can advise you about language and cultural issues when you're exporting. And we also run masterclasses specifically focusing on particular areas. So that's something that I'll give you some information about at the end. We also have digital advisors who can support you in developing an international website, an international social media strategy, and also help you with any e-commerce platforms that are suitable internationally for your products. And help with export documentation as well. So a real wide range of support and services available to UK companies, as I say, largely free of charge as well. Masterclasses, as I said, is a really excellent way of finding out some more information just in a morning, or sending along your partner as well and upskilling other staff. So we have a variety of masterclasses, whether it's export essentials, market research, helping you with sales and marketing internationally, export pricing, routes to market, and digital areas as well. Free of charge, as I say, and they take place throughout, well, they take place nationally, but for my area, I represent the West Midlands, and we have them on a regular basis in the different sub-regions within the West Midlands. We also have access to some financial support which might be worth mentioning. There is a thing called the Trade Show Access Programme, which does provide grants for eligible businesses to go and exhibit at certain international trade shows. And there's also the SME International Growth Project, which runs at the moment, which offers some match funding to eligible businesses in the West Midlands. So what I suggest you do next is check our website, which is www.great.gov.uk. And on there you've got a wealth of information divided up according to what level of export you're at. So if you're a new exporter, it will give you all the relevant information. An occasional exporter or a regular exporter will teach you and tell you and give you information about how to increase your exports. Also on the website, you've got the opportunity to create your export journey. So this is really useful if you're thinking about which market to focus on. So you just click on create your journey and you answer about 3 or 4 questions, and it will give you, I think, the top 10 markets where your service or product is purchased in the world, and will give you some other useful stats and information that will help you along your journey. It's also got export opportunities in there. So if you put in your product or service that you're selling and then press opportunities, at any one time there's up to about 1,500 opportunities from throughout the world for various export products or services. And this was the event I was just mentioning. I think it's still possible if you want to come along, if you're free on Friday at the ICC, New Year, New Markets, where, as I say, you have the opportunity to find out more about the culture and business and how business is done in various markets, but also the opportunity to meet up to 40 commercial representatives from different markets. So it's a free event, and you're very welcome to attend. So yes, I mean, if a business has to be involving and fun and exercise your creative instincts, what I'd say is that exporting gives you an ideal opportunity to find out new ways of doing things, and certainly will meet new people and have lots of fun along the way. It is an opportunity for you to grow your business, but you do have to have the time, commitment and resources to do it. But I think for the companies who've succeeded that I work with, it's truly inspiring and it's a fantastic opportunity for people. So thanks very much for listening.